Cupid A La Carte by O. Henry. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Matt Berard. Cupid A La Carte from Heart of the West by O. Henry. "The dispositions of woman," said Jeff Peters, after various opinions on the subject had been advanced, "run regular to diversions. What a woman wants is what you're out of. She wants more of a thing when it's scarce. She likes to have souvenirs of things that never happened. She likes to be reminded of things she never heard of. A one-sided view of objects is disjointing to the female composition." "'Tis a misfortune of mine, begotten by nature and travel," continued Jeff, looking thoughtfully between his elevated feet at the grocery stove, "to look deeper into some subjects than most people do. I've breathed gasoline smoke talking to street crowds in nearly every town in the United States. I've held 'em spellbound with music, oratory, sleight of hand, and prevarications, while I've sold 'em jewelry, medicine, soap, hair tonic, and junk of other nominations. And during my travels, as a matter of recreation and expiation, I've taken cognizance some of women. It takes a man a lifetime to find out about one particular woman, but if he puts in, say, 10 years, industrious and curious, he can acquire the general rudiments of the sex. One lesson I picked up was when I was working the West with a line of Brazilian diamonds and a patent fire kindler just after my trip from Savannah down through the cotton belt with Dalby's anti-explosive lamp oil powder. 'Twas when the Oklahoma country was in first bloom. Guthrie was rising in the middle of it like a lump of self-raising dough. It was a boom town of the regular kind. You stood in line to get a chance to wash your face. If you ate over 10 minutes, you had a lodging bill added on. If you slept on a plank at night, they charged it to you as board the next morning. By nature and doctrines I am addicted to the habit of discovering choice places wherein to feed. So I looked around and found a proposition that exactly cut the mustard. I found a restaurant tent just opened up by an outfit that had drifted in on the tail of the boom. They had knocked together a box house where they lived and did the cooking, and served the meals in a tent pitched against the side. That tent was joyful with placards on it calculated to redeem the world-worn pilgrim from the sinfulness of boarding houses and pick-me-up hotels. "Try mother's homemade biscuits." "What's the matter with our apple dumplings and hard sauce?" "Hot cakes and maple syrup like you ate when a boy." "Our fried chicken never was heard to crow." There was literature doomed to please the digestions of a man. I said to myself that mother's wandering boy should munch there that night. And so it came to pass. And there is where I contracted my case of Mame Dugan. Old man Dugan was 6 feet by 1 of Indiana loafer, and he spent his time sitting on his shoulder blades in a rocking chair in the shanty memorializing the great corn crop failure of '96. Ma Dugan did the cooking, and Mame waited on the table. As soon as I saw Mame I knew there was a mistake in the census reports. There wasn't but one girl in the United States. When you come to specifications it isn't easy. She was about the size of an angel, and she had eyes and ways about her. When you come to the kind of a girl she was, you'll find a belt of 'em reaching from the Brooklyn Bridge west as far as the courthouse in Council Bluffs, Iowa. They earn their own living in stores, restaurants, factories, and offices. They're chummy and honest and free and tender and sassy, and they look life straight in the eye. They've met man face to face, and discovered that he's a poor creature. They've dropped to it that the reports in the Seaside Library about his being a fairy prince lack confirmation. Mame was that sort. She was full of life and fun, and breezy. She'd pass the repartee with the boarders quick as a wink. You'd have smothered laughing. I am disinclined to make excavations into the insides of personal affection. I am glued to the theory that the diversions and discrepancies of the indisposition known as love should be as private a sentiment as a toothbrush. 'Tis my opinion that the biographies of the heart should be confined, with the historical romances of the liver, to the advertising pages of the magazines. So you'll excuse the lack of an itemized bill of my feelings toward Mame. Pretty soon I got a regular habit of dropping into the tent to eat at irregular times, when there wasn't so many around. Mame would sail in with a smile, in a black dress and white apron, and say, "Hello, Jeff, why don't you come at meal time? Want to see how much trouble you can be, of course. Fried chicken, beef steak, pork chops, ham and eggs, pot pie," and so on. She calls me Jeff, but there was no significations attached. Designations was all she meant. The front names of any of us she used as they came to hand. I'd eat about 2 meals before I left, and string 'em out like a society spread where they changed plates and wives, and josh one another festively between bites. Mame stood for it, pleasant, for it wasn't up to her to take any canvas off the tent by declining dollars just because they were whipped in after meal times. It wasn't long until there was another fellow named Ed Collier got the between meals affliction, and him and me put in bridges between breakfast and dinner and supper, that made a 3-ringed circus of that tent, and Mame's turn as waiter a continuous performance. That Collier man was saturated with designs and contrivings. He was in well boring, or insurance, or claim jumping, or something, I've forgotten which. He was a man well lubricated with gentility, and his words were such as recommended you to his point of view. So Collier and me infested the grub tent with care and activity. Mame was level full of impartiality. 'Twas like a casino hand, the way she dealt out her favors, one to Collier and one to me and one to the board, and not a card up her sleeve. Me and Collier naturally got acquainted, and gravitated together some on the outside. Divested of his stratagems, he seemed to be a pleasant chap, full of an amiable sort of hostility. "I notice you have an affinity for grubbing in the banquet hall after the guests have fled," says I to him one day, to draw his conclusions. "Why, yes," says Collier, reflecting, "the tumult of a crowded board seems to harass my sensitive nerves." "It exasperates mine some, too," says I. "Nice little girl, don't you think?" "I see," says Collier, laughing. "Well, now that you mention it, I have noticed that she doesn't seem to displease the optic nerve." "She's a joy to mine," says I, "and I'm going after her. Notice is hereby served." "I'll be as candid as you," admits Collier, "and if the drug stores don't run out of pepsin, I'll give you a run for your money that'll leave you a dyspeptic at the wind up." So Collier and me begins the race. The grub department lays in new supplies. Mame waits on us, jolly and kind and agreeable, and it looks like an even break, with Cupid and the cook working overtime in Dugan's restaurant. 'Twas one night in September, when I got Mame to take a walk after supper, when the things were all cleared away. We strolled out a distance and sat on a pile of lumber at the edge of town. Such opportunities was seldom, so I spoke my piece, explaining how the Brazilian diamonds and the fire kindler were laying up sufficient treasure to guarantee the happiness of 2, and that both of 'em together couldn't equal the light from somebody's eyes, and that the name of Dugan should be changed to Peters, or reasons why not would be in order. Mame didn't say anything right away. Directly she gave a kind of shudder, and I began to learn something. "Jeff," she says, "I'm sorry you spoke. I like you as well as any of them, but there isn't a man in the world I'd ever marry, and there never will be. Do you know what a man is in my eye? He's a tomb. He's a sarcophagus for the interment